A few days before I graduated from rabbinical school, I met my childhood rabbi for lunch in the North Shore of New York, also known as Westchester County. I asked Rabbi Morris Barzilai, who's a Skokie native and is the son-in-law of longtime NSCI congregant Lori Lieberman, if he had any advice for someone about to become a rabbi. To which he responded, go back and read your first Devar Torah, your first sermon, to reconnect with some of your inspiration before all those years of rabbinical school. So I went and found that Devar Torah that he referenced from back when I was a college student. And as both meaningful and a little bit cringy as it was to read this writing from all those years ago, one excerpt still stood out to me. It's an imaginative exercise from Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks, his memory be a blessing, where in his book called A Letter from the Scroll, he encourages the reader to imagine they're wandering the aisles of an endless library as a metaphor for forming your Jewish identity. So he encourages the reader to imagine you're in this really rows and rows of books in a library. He says the books go from the floor to the ceiling. You can read anything you want. You could switch topics. You can pick up one author. You could pick up another author. But then, he says, imagine that while browsing in the library, you come across one book that's unlike all of these other books, which catches your eye because on the spine is the name of your family. And obviously, you're interested. You pick up the book, you open it, you flip through it, you see the handwriting of many, many generations in all sorts of languages, all sorts of stories and hopes and dreams and struggles and challenges, and you start to understand what it is. And you keep turning the pages until you reach the very last one, which carries nothing but a heading. And that heading is your name. To me then, and still now, this thought exercise captures what is so fulfilling about being Jewish: the simultaneous pursuit of individual growth, meaning, and discovery, and the fact that we all belong in this book together. Our intersecting stories, communities, and histories are a reminder that we're always a part of something that's so much bigger than just ourselves. So I've written quite a bit on this page of mine in recent months. I finished 5 years of rabbinical school at the beginning of May. I got married one whole week later, probably the two biggest days of my life in 6 or 7 days. I got married to Rabbi Lily Goldstein, who's down the street at BJBE, giving her first sermon over there. And shortly thereafter, we moved here. So we can both fulfill this tremendous honor of being these new rabbis in our respective communities. And at each of these significant personal milestones, I also felt connected to that bigger picture, the bigger story in this book. Following the footsteps of the Jewish leaders who've inspired me as I became a rabbi, receiving wedding blessings that couples in both Lily and my families have received for generations as we stood beneath the chuppah during our wedding ceremony, and moving to Chicagoland, a new home for this native New Yorker, but not uncharted territory, as I learned about family who have lived here at some point in a thorough email from my great Aunt Leanie. It's the other side of the family. This week's Torah portion is another page that bears a name as its heading. This week's Torah portion is called Pinchas. In it, we have two stories centered around individuals, and in between those two stories is an Israelite census. First, we have the second and final installment of Pinchas's story, the story of the religious zealot for whom this Torah portion is named. A little more on that in Torah study tomorrow morning. And later in the portion, the focus shifts to 5 women: Machla, Noah, Hogla, Milcah, and Tirzah. They come before Moses and the whole leadership of Israel and argue that they should inherit their deceased father Zelophehad's land allotment, which is typically passed down through the male lineage in the Torah. Moses brings their case to God, who says that they are absolutely right. In a totally unprecedented turn of events, Machla, Noah, Hogla, Milka, and Tirzah advocated for themselves within the context of their specific family, and as a result created legislation that benefited the people of Israel as a whole for generations to come. And as I mentioned, in between those two stories is an extensive census, the second one to appear in the book of Numbers. Each of the tribes are listed along with the names of families, descendants, and population totals. It's a pretty long chapter, and I can confirm even more names in chapter 26 of the book of Numbers than I've encountered this past week meeting all of you wonderful people. And the census concludes with a total population count of 601,730. That should prove the point a little more. And while not exact, 601,000, 600,000 is a symbolic number throughout our tradition. How many Israelites left Egypt? Anyone want to take a gander, take a guess? 600,000. How many were present at the construction of the tabernacle? 600,000. And how about in the first census at the beginning of the book of Numbers? There you go. And now again at the end, 600,000. How about letters in the Torah? Rabbi Geffen got it. It's a trick question. There are 300 some odd thousand, 304, 305,000. But in the mystical Jewish tradition, these mystical rabbis interpret that there are 600,000 letters in the Torah as a way of further emphasizing and embedding the symbolic meaning of this number. So what does 600,000 mean? As taught by Rabbi Sarah Hurwitz and many of our sages, 600,000 is a metaphor for the sum total of all individuals, the sum total of all distinct personalities. Everyone now, everyone from generations past, and everyone yet to be born in generations to come. The stories about Pinchas and Machla, Noah, Hogla, Milka, and Tirzah are very much examples of individual pages in that special Jewish book in Rabbi Sachs's imaginary library. They are about specific people and their challenges, their successes, and ultimately their humanity. The census between them is the 600,000 page book itself, which includes these individuals and their stories, as well as you all and yours. I am truly humbled and grateful that this is the point in which the stories on our pages intersect. I deeply believe that the responsibility of a rabbi and all members of a sacred community is to learn each other's stories and eventually, hopefully, write the unfolding stories of our lives together. I've only been here 1 week, 6 days really. I met someone here who's been here 50 years, and they said I was in the middle of the pack. But I've already begun to discover some of the humanity that fills the pages of the North Shore Congregation of Israel census. At Minyan last Saturday, I learned that Howard grew up in Brooklyn, not even a mile from where I lived the past few years. I also learned that Rachel Ben Yosef introduces herself with the information that she and her sister Ella sing in Sela. I also learned over the course of the July 4th Memorial and Healing Services earlier this week that as individuals, leaders, and as a collective, this community is profoundly resilient and courageous. I consider it an immense privilege to learn your stories and to be present as they continue to develop. And I wholeheartedly thank you for trusting me to be one of your rabbis. We all belong in the symbolic 600,000, the symbolic library book of Jewish heritage, learning from and contributing to the ongoing Jewish story here at NSCI and with the details of our lives. I'm both thrilled and honored to continue writing that story together with you. Shabbat Shalom.
Just tell him Yasher Koach. It's a big deal.
Yeah.